The email wasn't an invitation. It was a warning disguised as courtesy. "We're hosting a private celebration at the Ashford estate this Saturday," it read. "Founders, partners, and legacy families only." My name wasn't on the formal list. Never was anymore. Not since the board voted to transition me out of the company I built. Not since they decided I was too cautious, too methodical, too resistant to aggressive expansion. What they really meant was I wouldn't let them gamble with something I created from nothing. By the time the champagne started flowing that night, they thought I was history. By midnight, they would realize I was the architect of everything still standing. The Ashford estate sits just outside London. Glass walls, manicured lawns, the kind of place designed for power deals hidden behind polite laughter. My former co-founders, investors from New York, legacy shareholders with inherited confidence. They all gathered to celebrate the new era of the company. The press had been carefully selected. Influencers invited. The narrative was prepared. Visionary male leadership takes control after female founder loses strategic clarity. I watched the livestream from my car parked beyond the gates, calm, composed, already 10 moves ahead. 3 months earlier they orchestrated my removal. Officially it was about performance metrics. Unofficially it was about control. I refused to approve a risky acquisition tied to a data harvesting firm with questionable ethics. They wanted explosive short-term valuation. I wanted sustainable architecture. The vote passed without me in the room. My access revoked. My shares diluted through a clause buried in emergency expansion authority. They assumed I hadn't read the fine print. They were wrong. I wrote the fine print. What they didn't know was that I had anticipated their impatience 2 years ago. While serving as CEO, I quietly created a parallel holding structure. Legal, compliant, invisible. I transferred key intellectual property rights into a protected entity under strategic asset preservation protocols. The predictive algorithm that powered 70% of our valuation, licensed not owned. The international patents, assigned to a subsidiary under my controlling trust. They thought they took my company. In reality they took the shell. Inside the estate, speeches began. My former partner Daniel Whitmore raised a glass. "Tonight marks decisive leadership," he announced. Applause followed. Investors nodded. Confidence radiated through curated lighting. That was my cue. At exactly 8:47 p.m., every screen in the venue flickered. Not hacked. Not illegally accessed. Contractually redirected. A clause in our media infrastructure agreement allowed majority IP holder override during material misrepresentation events. My face appeared calmly on the display behind Daniel. Gasps replaced applause. "Good evening," I began evenly. "You're celebrating control of a company that no longer owns its core technology." The silence was surgical. Daniel attempted to laugh it off. "This isn't amusing, Evelyn." "I agree," I replied. "Which is why you should have read Section 12 of the Founder Safeguard Agreement." Behind me, slides displayed documentation. Patent transfers. Licensing structures. International filings time-stamped 18 months earlier. The predictive engine, my engine, was now legally restricted from use without my authorization. Effective immediately, all deployments were suspended pending renegotiation. Phones came out. Lawyers were called. Investors whispered urgently. The press cameras kept rolling. "You removed me under performance claims," I continued. "Yet the quarter following my exit shows a 14% decline in algorithmic efficiency. That's because you removed the only person who understood its architecture." Daniel's composure cracked slightly. "You're sabotaging your own creation." "No," I corrected. "I'm protecting it." Then came phase 2. Simultaneously, regulatory disclosures were filed in both the UK and US regarding the attempted acquisition I had blocked. Internal emails surfaced, forwarded legally through whistleblower protection, revealing deliberate plans to bypass compliance thresholds for short-term stock inflation. Nothing criminal, just ethically radioactive. The room shifted from celebration to containment. One investor stepped forward. "What do you want?" Finally, the right question. "I want governance reform," I said calmly. "Independent ethics oversight. Restoration of founder voting shares. Public correction of the narrative regarding my removal. And a written acknowledgement that strategic restraint is not incompetence." Daniel stared at me as though seeing me clearly for the first time. Not emotional. Not reactive. You planned this, he muttered. For 2 years, I confirmed. The livestream audience surged. Social media feeds exploded. Financial analysts began speculating in real time. Stock volatility alerts triggered across markets. Within 30 minutes, the celebration had transformed into an emergency negotiation summit. But the true power shift didn't happen on screen. It happened when 3 major institutional investors privately messaged my legal counsel requesting immediate talks, without Daniel present. Because here's what they understood in that moment. Control isn't loud. It's leverage. By midnight, an interim agreement was signed restoring my IP authority and suspending the acquisition. Within 72 hours, a shareholder revote was scheduled under governance review. A week later, I didn't return as CEO. I returned as executive chair, with expanded oversight authority and a newly ratified ethics framework embedded permanently into company bylaws. Daniel retained his title, but not his dominance. The press narrative corrected itself. Founder reclaims strategic control. Interviews were requested. I declined most of them. Revenge isn't about humiliation. It's about recalibration. Last night I stood alone in the same estate ballroom, empty now, reviewing final contract amendments. The glass walls reflected the gardens outside. Quiet. Controlled. Earned. They thought removing me would weaken the structure. They didn't realize I was the structure. And this time, every decision passes through the architecture I designed. They hosted a celebration for my replacement. Instead they attended my return. And I never had to raise my voice.